Miss Liz. Tea time, yeah. Making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. Miss Liz. Tea time, yeah. Making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. So be sure to grab your tea, grab a seat, and tune in to Miss Liz. Tea time. Making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. Tea time.
Well, good morning and welcome to Tea Time. That's right. We are in the month of July. Who knew, right? 7 months in 2023. This morning, I have the incredible Linda and Charlie Bloom, husband and wife, 50-year anniversary. That's right, 50 long years. For all you couples out there, we can do this if we have the right answers and the right tips and tools. And we have that this morning here. Sitting with us, Linda and Charlie are in the back room, and they will be coming out and answering all your questions. So get them into the comment section and DM Miss Liz if you'd like to. All of that good stuff. So let's get started. Let's do the disclaimer and let's get some bio of Linda and Charlie. And then we're going to have a good, strong TEA this morning. So grab your breakfast. Don't forget, breakfast is very important. And share this tea time because this one is going to be a doozy. So disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz myself is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that the content brought forward for any Tea Time show hosted by myself, Miss Liz, is always brought forward in good faith. However, may bring forward dialogues and opinions that are not representative of my platform. The facts and information are perceived to be accurate at the giving time of airing. All Tea Time guests and audience participants are responsible for using their good judgment in taking any action that may relate to the discussion. The content brought forward may include discussion for some where they may be emotionally at risk. It's significant to know that this show is engaging in discussion forums only to offer and inspire awareness and connection and is not providing therapeutical advice, except for this morning. If you have any questions about the disclaimer or the panelist discussion, you may freely contact Miss Liz through my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com. Moving forward, should you choose to voluntarily participate in today's show in any aspect, I myself, Miss Liz, welcomes you. And should you decide that the show is not made for you at this time, I respect that choice and we'll see you at a later show at a later date and time. And again, all Tea Times this year in 2023 are done on a Thursday, 10, 3, and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, unless it's a rescheduled show, and then that'll be a Monday or a Tuesday. So now a little bit about my incredible guests that are sitting in the back. And I love couples. This year in 2023, I believe Linda and Charlie are my third couple, husband and wife team. So I am truly blessed to have husband and wife here. Linda and Charlie Bloom are seminar leaders, authors, psychotherapists, and consultants, and are considered experts in the field of human relations. They have been working with individual couples and groups throughout the country and internationally since 1975, and have been featured speakers at many professional and public conferences. They have made over 200 radio and TV appearances. They have been facilitating members and educators of a number of learning institutes and universities, including Alslan Institute, the Crossing, JFK University, Omega Institute, and so much more. So let me get this incredible couple in here and let me have a sip of my tea so they can come and share their tea with all of us this morning. So welcome, Linda and Charlie.
I'm so glad to be with you.
Me too. Thanks for inviting us.
Awesome. So let's get started with Linda and Charlie. I want to go back to where Linda and Charlie first got together and then how you got into being a relationship coaches.
Well, we've been together since bell-bottom pants back in the 60s. And we were college students in Boston. It was a very exciting time to be in college. You know, Boston is full of colleges. And we met at a barbecue, a party, and we hit it off right away. And we have been together for a very long time. And we, back in the day, didn't have good communication and negotiation skills. So it was a rocky road part of the time in our relationship. And we learned a great deal about how to handle differences. So we made up our mind that we better write it down. and give it to people to try to save them some trouble.
So, Charlie, what was it about Linda that you fell for Linda right away at a barbecue?
She liked my motorcycle.
The motorcycle man.
And so that was the point in her favor. But on a more serious side, I could tell that she was a very passionate person, that she didn't have any problem expressing herself, her feelings. You can probably tell even just by the way she just spoke that she's very authentic. And that appealed to me. I've always appreciated that in people. It's something that I've always valued in my own life, and it's a cornerstone of the work that we do with couples and individuals is to practice authenticity, which really has to do with just being real, being yourself, without scripting it, without creating some. It's not that you have to tell the truth to everybody all the time, but you have to be willing to be real. And sometimes that can feel challenging or risky. But that was one of the big things that I really liked about her. And what I also appreciated about her was that she seemed to like me. That was another point in her favor.
I want to give you an example, Elizabeth, of my being real. The very first week that I knew Charlie, I said, I'm going to have a career and I want to have children. And the last man that I was involved with didn't want to have kids. I'm already falling for you. I want you to be honest. If you don't want to have children, would you tell me now? I don't want to get involved with somebody who's not going in the same direction that I was. Talk about getting real. To Charlie's credit, he didn't get blown away by my being so upfront with him. And he said, yes, I want to have children one day, not anytime soon. And I do honor that a woman that would be involved with me would have a career. It's not an either or in my mind. And then I let myself fall in love with him some more.
Well, I think being upfront is a good thing to do because, if you don't be upfront, then a year later, 2 years later, that's where the issues come in because you haven't been upfront right from the get-go. And that's what Charlie said a few minutes ago was the authenticity, right? Let's be authentic. Let's be real and say, look, I don't want kids. Oh, yeah, I want a lot. Let's really put it on the table when we start a relationship. So we have a couple questions here for you guys that I want to get into. But I want to congratulate you guys on 50 years of marriage.
Thank you very much.
That golden anniversary is really hard to come by nowadays. And could you tell us why it's so hard that you're noticing as a couple?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to me, it's not surprising that so many marriages end in divorce. And what's equally disturbing and in the U.S. that's about 50%. Every other marriage is going to end in divorce. But what's even more disturbing than that is that of the 50% that don't end in divorce, there's a very high percentage of them that do not live in marital bliss. That many of those people have just kind of resigned themselves to a very limited kind of, in some ways, even superficial relationship. So it's not like half the people end in divorce, the other half are living in delightful experiences. There is some percentage who are, but in many ways, a lot of people have reason to believe that the institution of marriage is something that is no longer relevant or no longer appropriate for these times. We don't believe that. And we don't believe that there's anything intrinsically wrong with marriage or that marriage is right for everybody. It's not right for everybody. It's really what you bring to that relationship, what you make of it. Marriage is nothing more than an agreement between two people. And a lot of people have expectations that don't get met because they think, well, once we're married, such and such is going to happen. He's going to change. She's not going to change. Well, you're both wrong, because it's in the nature of being a human being that you experience change. So I think it has a lot to do with expectations that are not appropriate, that are not accurate, and a lack of preparation for it. Because you have to prepare, you have to be informed, you have to understand what it is that you're stepping into when you create a committed partnership. And it's not the same thing. You can't just go on the way you've been living with this other person, because you're going to have to do something that you don't have to do when you're single, which is negotiate. And what do you negotiate? Everything. Everything. And if you don't know the difference between negotiation and power and control, then you're doomed. Because negotiation is about cooperation. It's about interaction in ways in which both people are able to fulfill their needs and desires, not necessarily perfectly, but good enough. So, in answer to your question, I think it's really a matter of just not realizing exactly what it's going to require of you and how you can develop the traits and the skills and the abilities to meet those challenges.
You bring some really good points there, Charlie, because a lot of people, they just think marriage is instant happiness, right? You get married and boom, you're happy forever. And I've been putting this out for the last, I don't know, but maybe the last 45 days, because I get a lot of people that, oh, I love you, I want to marry you. Okay, but do you understand the word love? Do you understand the word marriage? Do you understand that it's a work? You can't just, big fancy night, a celebration. I take his name. I don't take his. Now people don't even take the man's last name. But a lot of people go into it as ownership as well.
Exactly.
I was married for 16 years. I'm divorced now, but I'm in a serious relationship again. For me, marriage is not my thing. It's not my cup of tea. I've done it once, and it kind of scarred me on the way that the communication and the relationship was built, right? It's because it didn't go into it with authentic reasoning and understanding what the two of us wanted. And I'm glad that you guys brought that up. And for all my viewers and listeners out there, we're going to get really deep this morning because Miss Liz has a lot of really deep questions for Linda and Charlie. And I want to get it out there that marriage is not the instant happiness. Marriage is, like Charlie says, there's negotiations, there's work, there's process, but I'm finding that as I'm looking at couples that are getting married now in today's society, they're just settling. They're having that big fancy evening or day, afternoon. And then after that, it's just settling. Well, what do you do with your spouse? I don't do anything with them. We got married. There's no date nights. There's no communication. The breakdown of communication is gone as soon as that evening is gone,
Yeah.
So that's what I'm finding as an outsource. But as relationship coaches, how do you feel about communication with couples today?
It's essential. It's a requirement to have a good relationship, whether it's a romantic partnership, a marriage, whether it's a good relationship with your children and your parents and your siblings and your coworkers and your friends. And I don't think that, generally speaking, people understand how essential really terrific communication skills are to have a high functioning, deep and meaningful relationship. And often we find when people think about communication, they think about being articulate in expressing yourself about your feelings and your needs. Some people are aware of that, but they don't see the other side, how incredibly important it is to become a black belt listener, to listen with empathy, to really take in what the message is that the other person is sending to you and be with it. We sometimes refer to that as talking meditation, that it actually has a spiritual practice as part of it, that we relate very authentically and we listen to the message between the lines. And often what people are communicating between the lines is, I want you to love me. I want you to like me. I want you to respect me. I want you to value me. I want to appreciate me. And when people can get vulnerable like that and speak more articulately and also listen to the message that other people are sending to them and really take it in and be with it, the depth of connection is so meaningful that the relationship hits the thrive zone, where people feel safe and secure, but also challenged. That we don't have, I had a couple years ago who used to call them the no-fly zones. We don't have the areas that we can't speak about. We create so much safety and security and trust in the relationship that we can bring up anything.
I like that no-fly zone, but I like that thrive zone, because we don't thrive. You know, there's. Could you give us like five tools or tips, like how to thrive in your relationship once you're connected?
Well, that's a great question. I think very few people ask that question, and maybe don't even realize what the word thrive means. It actually means to do more than just continue, to do more than survive, but it means to experience the fullness of life. It means to be deeply engaged in your experiences and in the experiences of other people. And it means to grow and flourish. And I think that for a lot of people, I talked earlier about expectations. They don't really, although it's kind of a paradox, because in some ways their expectations are unrealistic, but in other ways they're too low, because what a lot of people think is, well, sort of the best you can expect in a marriage is at least to kind of get along with each other, and not fight too much, and we think that that's,
Settling.
That's just like a microcosm of a tiny piece of what's possible. That it is possible for you as a person and as a couple to really thrive, to really experience life in the fullness in a way that it's difficult to when you're living a solitary life. And a lot of people make the choice of not getting into a committed partnership because they've had difficult experiences and they don't want to go through that again. And, I'm not, again, like I said earlier, marriage is not for everybody, but it's really important, I think, to recognize what is available in terms of how the quality of your personal life can transform when you partner with another person with whom you share a mutual commitment to each other's thriving. So that's one thing, is just to recognize the potential that's there. The other thing is that we all bring baggage into our relationships, not necessarily just from previous relationships, romantic partnerships, but it's very difficult to get through childhood into adulthood without having some unfinished business in your own life, without having developed some defensive patterns that got you through the rough times as a child, that don't now take over your interactions in your relationships with other people. Because what worked when you were 8 years old with parents who didn't really have the ability to parent you the way you really needed to be, doesn't necessarily work in your marriage. So if you decided as a child that you needed to be invisible so that people didn't punish you or hurt you, then that was one of your defensive strategies. If you decided that when somebody struck out at you, the best way to deal with that was to fight back, that was a defensive pattern. If you whatever you decided, and we all decide certain ways of getting through it, that's what you brought into your marriage. So the work that people have to do is really about working on themselves to liberate themselves from the tyranny of the old defensive patterns that keep them from interacting with, like Linda said, vulnerability, authenticity, openness, and to get free from some of those patterns. Mm-hmm. So, to be willing to recognize, I've got work to do, you've got work to do, we all have some. Let's figure out what it is, and let's see what it's going to require to do that. Maybe, we need to learn more about this. Maybe we need to get into counseling, maybe whatever, read books, whatever. But to have that proactive orientation of recognizing that this is what my work is, and this is what I need to focus on, rather than focus on what's disappointing me or upsetting me or scaring me or making me angry because of the other person. I need to look at, okay, what about me? What can I do to be a more effective agent in this situation? Mm-hmm. You want to add something to that?
Yes, I agree with everything that Charlie said. And when you were asking for the 5 tips, the first thing that came to mind is to learn how to speak the truth without blame and judgment. And for a lot of us, this was true of us in the old days, we didn't know how to do that. And we had grown up in families who threw their judgments and criticism and their opinions around, and to speak the truth of our experience. You hear a lot about I statements, and sometimes people know that I statements are very powerful. They are. And feeling statements are very powerful. And then they start out by saying, I feel, and then they lapse into you're a jerk. Do you know? So they're not really keeping the essence of the guideline. So learning how to speak the truth of our experience, which is, quite a discipline, to pause and reflect before we speak so that we're really effective in our communication, talking about our feelings and our needs. Another thing that's a very important tip is about making your relationship a priority. We teach about happiness, and all of the people who we respect in the positive psychology field say the same thing, that you get the biggest bang for your buck out of your closest relationships. And so that's what you want to make a priority. Of course, people's career is important. We love our career. We dedicate a lot of time and effort to our career. But when they do the research all around the world, it's been going on for more than 8 decades now. It's consistent all over the world in every culture that people thrive when they have deep connections to family and community. So making your relationships a priority, the other things in our life tend to go well when our relationships are working well. Another tip that I offer when I'm doing counseling with the couples that I work with and when we teach our classes, let your vision be big. Reach high. Don't settle. You're very keenly aware of how little people are settling for. It's one of the hardest things that we do, is that we encourage the people that we work with, go back to when you were 12, maybe a preteen, maybe your early teens, maybe when you were in college and you were in your 20s. What were you dreaming your life would be about? And how much have you ratcheted that down? Can you take that old vision out of mothballs and revive it and resuscitate it? And don't expect anybody to bring you that happiness and thriving on a tray. You start connecting the dots about what you can do. Charlie talked about being proactive, what you can do, what your work is to do to manifest that lofty vision. And then there's one other tip that's really powerful. Become a champion of repair, because there are going to be breakdowns and we're going to need to learn how to do do-overs, how to apologize, how to forgive ourselves, how to forgive the other person. And becoming adept at repairing is an extremely important life skill, particularly with those people who are the closest to us. So I would say those were some of the hottest tips that I can offer.
Well, and I love having this conversation with you guys this morning, because I'm going to pull it out a different way, and I'm going to bring the questions a little different. Like Charlie says, a lot of people don't ask these questions because I pull out words and things that what I'm getting and what my audience is giving me back as feedback. You mentioned the word mothballs. I don't even think a lot of people and listeners today know what mothballs are.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you put a mothball and you let it settle, and I keep getting this word from you guys, settling. A lot of people are just settling today. Why are we settling like mothballs?
We don't want to be disappointed.
Yeah.
Disappointment hurts. And if we set expectations that are too high, we risk disappointment. A lot of people think that the best way to avoid disappointment is just to have low expectations. So it's a defense against the pain of loss, of disappointment. And it's a way of minimizing or preventing, avoiding risk. So one of the things that we talk to people about is looking at what are the qualities in your life that you need to strengthen in order to become competent at the challenge of managing and creating fulfilling relationships. Because simply knowing what you want is a good step, but it's not the last step. It's the first step in the process. Well, the first step is recognizing that it's possible. And then to see, well, what is it that I really want? And then the next question is, what's it going to take on my part to be able to fulfill these desires? What qualities do I need to establish and deepen and strengthen in my life? And one of, so in our last book, we have a list of qualities that will serve you in the process of creating deep, fulfilling relationships. And then we also talk about the practices that you need to engage in order to develop each one of these qualities. And so at the top of the list is one that most people are surprised about, because at the top of our list anyway, because they don't think it should be in there. They don't associate it with relationships, but it's courage. The courage to be willing to risk being truthful and authentic. The courage to take on this big challenge. The courage to be able to take the risks that are going to be asked of you to take in the process. So we really, try to help people to see what are your particular qualities that you specifically want to develop. Maybe it's courage. Maybe another one might be compassion. Maybe it could be, for many people, for me it has been, patience. That's a big one. Forgiveness, acceptance, tolerance, intention.
Resilience.
Yeah. Anyway, those are just some examples.
But Charlie, you're bringing some really good points, courage, the courage of marriage.
Yeah.
We don't talk about that. We just talk about instant happiness,
Right.
Let's talk about the hard stuff, the compassion, the authenticity, the patience. And you mentioned your new book. So I want to get into that book. You guys have written an incredible book on arguments. I want to get into what was one of your biggest arguments and how did you resolve it?
We had the same fight thousands of times. And in the field of therapy, they used to call it the distancer and the pursuer. It changed over time, and then they start to talk about the one who's avoidant and the one who's anxious. I've never really liked the terms because they're so pathological. So we tend now to call them the freedom fighter and the connector.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. And Charlie has always been very independent. Freedom is one of his highest values. He's also an introverted guy, so he needs a lot of alone time. Me, I'm a flaming extrovert. I figure out what I'm thinking and feeling while I'm speaking. I'm a connector. I have a list. I call it my dialing for dollars list. It's got about 30 people on it with everybody's phone numbers, because if anything is confusing to me or troubling to me, I go down the list. You got to have a long list because people don't pick up. And I keep reaching out until I can talk to somebody and talk it through. This was a real difficulty for us in the early years because I took it very personally when he needed his alone time, his introversion, his freedom to make his decisions, not collaboratively. Me as a connector, I don't like to talk over all our decisions and come to a joint decision. And so I would feel so rejected. Oh, it's too bad he doesn't love me so much. And it was divisive because I was sad, I was angry, there was a lot of resentment, and I was not very skillful about the way I would bring it to his attention. I would say, what did you even get married for? Why didn't you become a monk? You seem like you want to be alone, And I would feel so hurt and rejected. It took us a while to understand nobody's wrong here, only different. And that was a very big turning point for us when I could respect that he did love me. And when he was with me, he was very present, generous of spirit, devoted to loving me in the way I wanted to be loved. But he also needed a lot of alone time and to feel free to make his choices independent of collaborating with me. I like to think that Charlie's learned a lot about connection over the years and come out of his isolation and privacy to be able to coordinate with me, and our relationship has flourished as we have learned from each other over time. And so I feel like this is an issue that we are very keenly aware of and have as a specialty, a subspecialty in our couples counseling, because so many couples struggle with this.
So the book that you wrote is called 101, an An End to Arguing 101 Valuable Lessons for All Relationships. So 101, is there like 101 tips in the book?
Yeah.
Is there like examples of arguments that you might have had in your relationship to help other couples?
Yeah. Well, some of the stories are about us. Yeah. Well, we're how we learned in the trenches. And a lot of the stories that are included are from students and friends and clients that we've learned. We disguised them, so confidentiality was respected. But they're real live examples, do you know, of how people learned how to repair, how people learned how to negotiate, how people learned from each other, like the freedom fighter and the connector. And so people love stories and they love concrete examples. Show me the how to. And it seems that it inspires people. Well, if they did it, I can do it too. So we always tell our before and after stories, and all. This is the 5th book we've written. We always tell our stories in our books because people see how far we've come. Sometimes Charlie thinks we deserve the trophy for the most improved. But we have from the very beginning, lived out of a growth model. So we're always appealing to our students and our clients and our readership to have a growth model, not to be fixed, not to be defined by their past, to really see that there's so much more available than they may have thought before. But you need to work towards it. Some people have a terrific work ethic. It shows up in the success of their career, but they just don't know what their work is in terms of personal relationships. So we give them a lot of how to, their steps. Do you know, a lot of the chapters have the steps offered. You don't have to do them in order. You don't have to do all of them, but there probably will be something that will stand out and resonate and say, oh yeah, that's me. I'm conflict avoidant. I need to grow some courage to bring up the tough subjects because they're not going to go away. We need to lean into the challenge of finding a way to discuss this.
So Linda, can we see the cover of the book again?
Here you go.
So for all the viewers out there and the people that will watch the replay, and if you're tuning in and you're watching a replay, please push #replay and let me know where you're tuning in from, because Linda and Charlie would also like to know where we're tuning in from. But go out and grab a copy. I want to bring these topics to the table because a lot of people are not talking about relationships. A lot of people are not talking about marriage. Everyone's talking about the wine and roses, but they're not talking about the arguments and the struggles and the courage that it takes to build and grow. And the opposite attracts. That's what I got from that. The last question that I just asked you, Linda, as you were sharing, is you guys were opposites. And a lot of people will find opposite attractions and build on that. Why is that?
I think that we're all predisposed to be intrigued and attracted, and at the same way repelled by a person who is our counterpart, our opposite, in terms of personality. Linda used the example of introverts and extroverts. So an introvert is somebody who processes the world through their own internal inner experience. And when they have difficulties or they meet a challenge, their impulse is to kind of disengage and go into their own private space and really consider that. Extroverts, like Linda said, they're the opposite. They process information, they process their feelings interactionally, interpersonally, by speaking to somebody about what they're experiencing. So none of us are pure introverts or extroverts, but there's different balances. So I'm more on the side of introversion. Linda's more on the side of extroversion. And so we are going to attract and be attracted to people who are our counterparts, who are really bringing a different perspective. And I think the reason for that is because some part of us knows that our take on life, our perspective, our way of being, our view of how things are, of reality, is biased or limited because of the nature of our previous experience. So our personalities develop with this bias towards our own predisposition. And there's a part of us that wants to expand that perspective to be able to see the world in broader terms and bring more depth, more clarity, more variety into our lives, because it can be pretty limited when you only view it through what could be a very narrow tunnel. There's a lot of possibilities out there outside the limits of that tunnel that you can't even see.
Yeah.
Never mind take advantage of. So we naturally do tend to bring somebody in who's going to challenge our worldviews, hopefully, because we need to have them challenged in order to see, hey, there is more. Mm-hmm. And here are some examples of it. Now, I'm not saying that it feels good when somebody challenges your take on how things are, because when we walk into something, it's not like this is an opinion. It's like, hey, this is fact, this is reality, and you need to get it. So that requires the development of another trait, of another quality, of flexibility, of openness, of the willingness to be wrong, because guess what? Some of us occasionally could possibly be wrong. We may not want to admit it, but ask your partner if they think you've ever been wrong.
I think that brings a good point, Charlie, is allowing yourself to be wrong, and taking ownership of being wrong. And it's not who's right, who's wrong. It's when you're wrong, just admit it and admit it. And then we can move forward. But when we put all of the sneakiness in and the lies in and the cheating in, then we got destruction going on, right?
Yeah. Then you've got a real problem. The problem isn't that you made a mistake or that you misjudged something or that you were wrong. Problem is exactly what you just said, that you're not willing to acknowledge it. And so, you get angry, you start defending yourself, you start rationalizing, you don't, and in the meantime, the problem with that is that you don't learn anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Make a bigger mess.
You just stay.
Right. You get destruction. You got the army trucks coming in and taking something that could have been resolved with just saying, I was wrong.
Just those 3 words. But for some people, they'd rather have needles stuck in their eyes than admit those 3 words. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is.
It's like you catch the kid with his hand in the candy jar, and he says, "No, my hand is not in the candy jar.
It's in the jar."
You think I'm really that stupid that I'm going to believe your hand is not in there? I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah. Well, we use that. My grandma and grandpa used to use that. They were married for 60 years. And my grandma used to say, I caught him in the cookie jar all the time.
I know what she's talking about. Yeah, that's right. So admit it, Our ego doesn't like to admit that we're wrong. Yep. It feels too vulnerable. If I admit I'm wrong, then I am subject to being punished. If I admit that I did something I should not have done, then I don't want to be punished. And so when people get really defensive like that, it's almost always for that reason. They don't want to be vulnerable to having somebody get angry at them or punish them. And that's probably what happened when they were younger. And so they learned, don't ever admit you're wrong. That's the best way to avoid punishment. Just don't admit it, no matter what.
Well, it goes right back into the patterns of settling, right? We're going right back to the mothballs again.
Exactly.
We're going back to what we grew up with, the patterns, the baggage that we brought into the relationship, instead of, being open and authentic right from the get-go. Like Linda, right from the get-go said, like, I want kids, and I want, when we're really honest and we're really open right from the get-go, the relationship actually does grow. But when we come in being sneaky and lying and cheating right from the get-go, we're not getting anywhere. We're just making bigger messes. That's all we're doing, um, Linda, I want to get into, I think it's a good time to ask you what your T is, the 3 words that you're going to give me today for our tea time.
Integrity. And some people are a little unclear about what the word means. It comes from the base of the root of the word is integer 1, when what we think and feel and say and do is all lined up as 1. That's a piece of work. We really have to grow some to have all of those things, to be a person of integrity. Generosity, to feel that life is good. I have a lot going for me. I am abundant. I have lots of extra to give, to stretch when we feel like we want to, hold it in, to practice generosity on a regular basis, on a daily basis. I don't mean financially, necessarily materially, but with our time and attention to give to the people who are precious to us. And responsibility is very, very, very high on my priority list, to try to live responsibly, so that when we get to the end of our life and we're looking back over our life, that we don't live with regrets, that we weren't dedicated to comfort and security and didn't risk, that we knew what had heart and meaning for us, and we took responsibility for going into the person who could manifest that big vision, those lofty dreams, those exquisite goals. And so I believe that these are all essential for meaningful connection, to take responsibility, to be a person of integrity, and to live a life of generosity.
I really love the words that you guys are using today, because we don't hear these words enough. Or we have people using these words and don't understand the meaning of these words. And this is what I want my listeners to understand, is we bring these topics to the table to bring awareness, to bring connection, to bring communication. Right now, we're having an open discussion. We're communicating to each other as a host and as guests, and we have to do that in a relationship. You have to build different relationships. So it's not just a marriage relationship. It's a relationship between you and your guest, you and your companion, you and your spouse, you and your child. Relationships are all over the place. So as relationship coaches, how do you feel that we can better relationships out there?
I think the first step is just to be honest with yourself and notice if you are envying people who you see as having relationships like the one that you'd like to have. To see that underneath the envy, there's a desire to have something, and to be honest with yourself about how important it is to you to have that experience. Because so many people, like I said earlier, to avoid disappointment, keep their expectations down low, are not willing to really tell the truth to themselves about what they really want, because they're afraid that if they set their sights too high, they're going to risk disappointment. So they're not honest. If they were honest, when they saw a person or a couple who had the experience that they really want to have, they would recognize that they have that desire themselves. Mm-hmm. And when you recognize it and really own that that is true for me, it's harder to not direct your intention in that direction, which puts you at risk. It means that You might have to make some changes. You might have to do some things that are uncomfortable. You might have to do some things that you've been avoiding. When you really tell the truth to yourself about your desires, and then you tell the truth to yourself about the thing that most of us are most terrified to admit, is that one day it's going to be too late. When you really get that, because we tell ourselves, well, that would be nice to have, but, I'm too busy now, or, maybe later. Well, guess what? There is no such thing as later. Later never comes. It's always something that hasn't arrived yet. And if you live your life as somebody who is not, who is a procrastinator, I'll do it later, you will come to a point in your life where later is too late.
Yep.
And when you are honest about that, it's harder to deny the reality of your own truth. And at some point you have to say, I've got to just bite the bullet and go for it. And, if I don't get it, it's like that saying, better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. Better to go for it and fail than to come to the end of your life and have it be full of regrets I wish I had.
And I think you're bringing some really good points, Charlie, because, a lot of people say, well, I want what they have. But they don't see the struggles. They don't see all of the hard work that was put into that 50 years of marriage.
They think
the disagreements are, I want to get married. I want to be together for 50 years. I'm going to be the happiest person, but they don't want to do the work.
No, that's exactly right.
We wrote a book about that too. Book number 2 is Secrets of Great Marriages. And we had been in the field so long, seeing suffering, struggling couples, that we wanted to have an antidote to all of that darkness and, suffering. And so we made a study, an anecdotal study of the happiest couples we could find and let them tell their secrets of success. And nobody lucked into those wonderful marriages. They earned their way in, and they had some serious challenges along the way. There were couples who were homeless, that they made bad financial investments in a business, and they had to move with their kids and their dog into some friends' home for a while because they couldn't, keep their home. We had people who had discovered affairs that almost polished off their marriages, and struggles, health struggles of all different kinds. But they had that kind of grit, of I'm going to use this as an opportunity, and we're not going to let this polish us off. And they worked. So there's no free lunch. And so even if you don't have those, very serious traumas, which a lot of couples do have, but you have the ordinary garden variety, there's still all opportunities to learn and grow. Learn about yourself, learn about the other person, learn about relationship, learn about communication and negotiation skills. These are opportunities embedded in a relationship if you have an agreement that your relationship is going to be about learning and growth, and that one of the reasons we're together is to stretch into each other's world to become more, and that we're here to support each other, to bring out the best in each other, not the worst in each other. When we bring out the worst in each other, instead of just blaming the other person for being deficient, that we use that. Sometimes I call that using all the crap of the relationship as compost to bloom out of. In every relationship, the best relationships all have some crappy stuff in it, but you can use it.
It's true, right? We got to go into them as growing, not as destruction. There's that blame game. Let's stop the blame game. Let's really just take accountability and responsibility. It's like you said, integrity, generosity, and responsibility. The responsibility of I screwed up. I made a mistake. I'm wrong. Those 3 words will save a lot of destruction, a lot of hurt, a lot of more betrayal, and communication is number one. I say this all the time to everyone. If we don't talk, we don't know what's going on. None of us are mind readers. Some of us might think we are, but we're not mind readers. We have to have that communication, and it's actually listening, like you said right from the get-go. The black belt of listening. We really got to start listening, not listening to respond, but listening to understand, so that we can find the tools and solutions in that. I want to get, we're almost at the hour here. I want to get your final words and how people can reach out to you, and how your services are provided and all that good stuff before we wrap up.
Okay. So we have a website, Bloomwork, BLOOM, work, singular, not Bloomworks, bloomwork.com. We have all kinds of free stuff on our website. There's a link that takes you to the psychology blogs, Psychology Today. We have over 600 blogs there, and we got 10 million hits on our blogs. There are also 3 free ebooks there that people can download and use. And there are videos. Our YouTube channel has a couple hundred videos. So there are all kinds of things that people can use for their growth. So if they just remember either Linda Bloom or Charlie Bloom or Bloomwork, it will take them to all the neat things that are on our site, and all of our books are there too. And I just want to encourage your listening audience that sometimes people say, oh God, all these things they're talking about, it's so much work. I don't want to have to work that hard. But when you start to connect the dots about the bonanza of benefits, of the payoffs for doing this personal work, I mean, we're all in relationship. While we're there, we might as well use it. It's such an opportunity. And the trust, the peace of mind, the self-confidence, the feeling of life is good, and I'm up to the challenges that life is going to give me. The bonanza of benefits make it so worthwhile to do the work.
I love that you say work. My audience, you need to work. You need to do your homework. Life is, it's not wine and roses. There's going to be bumps. There's going to be roadblocks, but you have to find solutions. And, I want everything easy. I feel entitled. She's my wife. He's my husband. They're going to just, that's not how life works. We really have to listen to Linda and Charlie. Like, they've been married for 50 years. Have they had their struggles? Absolutely. It took them time to learn and grow with each other. And that's what I want for all of you listeners out there. If you're in a relationship and you're struggling, reach out to Linda and Charlie. If you want any questions on how to reach out to them and you can't find them, you can always reach out to Miss Liz. We really need to start having that open conversation. We have to have real, authentic conversations, not all the wine and rose talk that it's all pretty and it's easy and you're going to get married and you're going to go live happily ever after, like Prince Charming and Cinderella. Even Cinderella had her challenges after she married Prince Charming. So I want to get your final words, guys, before we wrap up. So Linda, any final words you have for the listeners out there?
It's a labor of love. It's a labor of love. It's an exquisite growth opportunity. Don't miss it.
So Charlie, any final words?
Just 3, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Yes, it involves work. It involves the willingness to develop parts of yourself that need to be strengthened and reinforced. It's going to take effort, and sometimes it's scary, but it's worth it. It's what is possible, like Linda suggested, is more than you can literally imagine in terms of what it feels like to live a life of integrity, where you really don't live in fear and anxiety and resentment, but you live in inner peace with yourself, and life becomes play rather than work. Work transforms into play. It's all play. The work that we do, we experience as play. When we work with our clients, when we talk with you and your audience, it's play. So,
Well, Charlie, play. We need to play sometimes, right? All seriousness aside, when we're working and we're working good, we're playing, right?
exactly.
It's fun.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's not work or play. They are one when you bring that attitude and that sense of awareness that this is what this is about.
Absolutely.
And we're doing it right now.
Yeah.
I'm
Right?
having a great time with you. Your questions are beautiful.
Well, I want to thank you guys for joining me on Tea Time today and bringing some awareness and bringing some real raw talk, because that's what we do here on Tea Time. Miss Liz brings the hard topics to the table, but I bring it and I have some fun. My guests, and they spill and they share their authentic selves, where there's no green screens here, there's no play, fake. It's all real. So if you would like to reach out to Linda and Charlie, check out their website, bloomword.com. Check out the description in all of their promotional material that has been shared on multiple platforms. And also check out the links that will be going up in the next few days from Linda and Charlie. And check out the websites. And if you'd like to see more of Linda and Charlie, you can check out Miss Liz's website as well at www.misslizsteatime.com. All of my platforms as well. And I really want to thank you guys for coming and sharing. And congratulations on 50 years. Let's bring another 50 years coming. And we will be back at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Bracha Gortz, who was on season 3, and she'll be returning on season 4 for an update on her new books. And she writes children's books. So we do relationships in the morning, and then we're doing afternoon relationships. And then we're going to wrap up at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Dr. Roger Leslie, and he'll be talking about his memoir, his life story. So today it's going to be about life, relationships, and how we can make a better tomorrow when we serve our real true tea. So until then, I will see everybody at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, thank you, Charlie and Linda. I will see you guys in just a moment.